Akademisi Morning Show, everyone. It is now past 8 in the a.m. and it's time for our second discussion of the morning. And for this one, we are going to have a deep dive into this recent phenomenon. We reported on some stories as well of academic ghostwriting. And some of these stories have obviously gone viral for the past weeks, creating some backlash among the academic communities.
Yes, as academic pressure is getting higher each and every year, some students decide to choose an easy route by hiring a ghostwriter to write their thesis. So what exactly are the main factors that prompt these students to do such things?
Now, we're going to try to find out more about it, as joining us this morning is educational specialist Ina Liem. She will give us some of her insights in regards to this recent phenomenon. Good morning, Ina. Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning, Karina. Good morning, Paul.
So let's first off, for those that aren't familiar with this story, what exactly is what counts as academic ghostwriting?
Well, actually, the phenomenon that goes viral recently, it's not ghostwriting.
Okay. What is
it's actually thesis jockey. With ghostwriting, you can have the original idea from you, but because probably you're busy, you're probably a public figure, you're working, you don't have time to actually write it up.
Yeah.
And ghostwriting nowadays can be in the shape of AI. Now you can ask, ChatGPT to find a more unique title, not the boring title, and it's in the workplace. A lot of people now do that anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
But with this phenomenon, it's not
Essay
just
jockey.
writing.
Okay.
It's essay jockey. The whole idea, most of them, the whole idea, they pay somebody else to do it. The idea, they don't even do the research.
The entire thing.
The entire thing. Well, it depends. In business, they offer different services, right?
Okay.
Just from the beginning or the whole thing. So it depends
Different
on how
packages.
much money you want to pay.
This is weird.
Yeah.
We're starting to see the term jockeying is weird because I was familiar with it for when we had a 3-in-1 system. When you had to have 3 people in the cars, you would have a jockey come into your car to fulfill the obligation.
Carpool,
But then they started to be recently running jockeying. So people would wear each other's fitness trackers and then they would run the route for them, and then you could post on social media like you did it. But this one has much more repercussions in the sense that it is actually towards academic achievements. So how common exactly is this essay jockeying here in Indonesia?
Oh, it's very common. I think it's not just recently. It started years ago, but the difference is in the past, probably people were embarrassed of doing that.
Yeah.
But nowadays, people just openly
ask,
and they don't think there's nothing wrong of doing it because they see everybody else is doing it, so it's becoming very common.
So the mindset has changed, even though the practice has been around for a long time.
Yeah, but the culture actually has been there forever because it's actually a mentality.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not like the action, but it's the mentality of trying to find grades, focusing heavily on the grades, not the skills itself.
Right. Okay. Now, speaking of that mentality and mindset, what do you think are some of the factors that make these students want to look for a ghostwriter instead of writing these essays or thesis themselves?
Yeah, there are two mentality of our nation actually that we need to address. Okay. One is the mentality of reaching highest grade instead of the process of learning itself.
Right.
Like when I was studying in Australia, it hit me because I didn't realize that I was very good student back in high school. I was always sort of in the top 10, top 5, top 3, that sort of thing. I had no problem achieving good grades. Yeah. But when I studied in Australia, my lecturer gave me 10 questions. And I went to the library with this Australian friend. And I finished it very fast. And I thought, okay, here we go. Like, we can go home. We can get 100. That's all that matters, right? We can get 100.
Result.
But my Australian friend, up to question number 5, she asked me, why do you think it's this? And I thought it's not even asked. Why do you need to find the answer?
Why?
I went home, but then that moment changed me. I realized so far we are busy chasing the grades. Yeah. But when you ask us to work, I realized my friend is gonna do a better job because that project is just that 10 questions. It's just a trigger for us to find out more about it, about that topic. So it affects the work performance, actually not just academic achievement. That's one mentality of focusing more on the grades. The second is the mentality of cutting corners.
Okay, shortcuts.
Instantly, and
Shortcuts.
I think there's an Indonesian anthropologist back in the 70s already said that, Kunchara Ningrat, in his book, that Indonesian people tend to have that mentality.
look for the
of
quick
cutting
way.
corners,
Yeah.
So this seems to be a much deeper rooted problem and may not actually be isolated to us here in Indonesia as well, where if students are chasing only that final result and not focused on the process of learning, is there something wrong with the system itself that needs to be fixed in the sense that I have a lot of friends back in the day that would just be focused on their final thesis or their final essay. We call it the skripsi. All they cared about is finishing their skripsi. If you ask them now, 5, 10 years on, hey, tell me about your skripsi and explain it, they probably won't even be able to. All they cared about was finishing and handing it in on time. So is there something that needs to be fixed on that end where students are not, and is it even fixable for students not to have to just chase that final mark or final result? And how do we fix it? You know, is it
There's a
even
lot
possible?
to be fixed.
Okay.
It's a very complicated problem because it's not just the system. Quite often in education, if there is something wrong with it, we point fingers to the Ministry of Education.
True.
While it takes a village to raise a child, we should probably start focusing on ourselves. What have we done as parents?
Yeah.
Have we shown good examples of
Right.
not doing that in the workplace that we do? Right?
Yeah.
And as teachers as well, as lecturers, because before this phenomenon, I think there's a lot of issues as well in the media, like professors themselves, they actually, use joki as well, or ghostwriters as well. So they set bad examples for the younger generations.
Right.
So if we want to fix it, not just in the system. The system itself, the Minister of Education last year has created a new system, right? That thesis is no longer compulsory.
Right.
Yeah, so universities can choose themselves
To have their own.
To
have
have
their
their
own
own,
system,
yeah.
graduation requirements,
Yeah.
either projects or exams or a plus, a thesis, whatever they can.
You've just triggered something in me as well because, with my 9-year-old, I ask her like, oh, these are your grades. We always focus so much on the grades, like, oh, you did well here, and this one you didn't, your marks weren't so
Yeah.
good. Whereas I'm less focused on asking her as to
The experience, what
well,
she
yeah,
learned,
what did you
the
have any trouble in
process,
this
yeah.
particular, as opposed to
Yeah.
just the final remark,
Yeah.
final marks.
So I mean, I guess at least when I was in school, I was never good at every subject, right? There were certain subjects that I excelled more at because I actually liked the subject, and I feel like that's also the case for many students here. But also, I mean, I'd love to hear your take on this, Marina. Sometimes the things we learn in school we don't always necessarily take into life experiences, right? And what are some of the things that you think we can sort of teach these students to not be so grade-oriented?
Yeah, that's what the problem, because we were using a content-based method in the
Yeah.
past for so many years. We focus more on the content, deliver the content. So we try to chase that. And the media as well has a role in this case, because we've seen a lot of news focusing too much on university students who graduate with GPA 4.0.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of focus is on that area. I just interviewed a head of HR yesterday, actually, and she recently very disappointed because every 2 years she recruits MT, management trainee. There's a group of like 30 groups or something, and she couldn't even find one creative candidate. Everybody basically just used ghostwriter, in this case AI. Wow. So that's not what she wants to find.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to find the correct answers. Nowadays, you can find correct answers through AI.
Yeah.
But she wants to find creativity. When she gave case study, all the answers, believe it or not, 30 groups give exactly
The same answer. Oh my goodness. And she was probably looking for somebody who can find the path to the answer as opposed to finding the answer itself, right?
Right. Or some creative, original, authentic idea from you. And you can get that process through doing the education, whether it's primary or secondary.
Right.
Okay, so that's it. You bring up an interesting point. What are some of the long-term implications? We know what the implications could or could not be for the students. It could be that they get their marks and they move on, and they may not even work in the same field that they studied. But when it comes to zooming out and look at the bigger picture, how will this affect, say, the workforce? Because when you have somebody in HR and they're hiring, they can no longer rely on these final marks that they're looking at. Hey, here's my graduation diploma, here are my marks. But what does that really reflect if they may not have possibly done the work themselves to achieve these marks?
It affects a lot. It
Yeah.
affects the performance. As I said, creativity is just one thing, but doing the grit, the determination to finish something and going through, obstacles along the way that you cannot quit, you have to fight for it. Time management, trying to contact people when you try to interview for your thesis, communication skills, how you say good morning, not just jump into the content straight away. So a lot of skills that you can get actually through the education process if you do it yourself.
Right.
Instead of just paying someone to do it. And so the implication in the workplace, the work performance, now companies are finding it hard to find the right candidates, that sort of thing. So
It's just made it a lot more challenging, hasn't it?
Yeah.
it is, it has.
If anything.
A lot of complaints actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's so, as you said, it's so easy to get the right answer, but just getting a creative, authentic, original
and
one.
you don't become an expert. Like in my case, just an example, I used to do interior design, and that was a project my lecturer gave me to try to design an apartment for disabled people. With the 10 questions, I might only know 10 measurements, creating apartment for disabled people, but my Australian friend, she knows all about designing for disabled people. So it does affect the workplace, the work performance, right?
I'm
Very
sure.
much.
So, looking at trying to reverse this mindset or this phenomenon that's been happening, what is a good way for us to motivate, let's not talk about changing the system because that's a whole different thing, but what's a good way for us to motivate young ones, students, in order for them to actually want to do the work, because realizing that this will be a benefit for them down the road as opposed to taking a shortcut.
And also not feel pressured
Yeah.
that they have to achieve a certain grade, but more about the learning process.
Yeah, because my son's school has a very good motto: education is not a race; it's actually a journey, and I totally agree with that.
Really good.
Yeah, so well, parents, again, the most effective education method or teaching method is by example.
Starts at
So
home.
walk the talk. We don't just say you must do this, but we don't practice it ourselves. So sounds very simple, but the practice, it takes a village. Everybody else has to collaborate to give it good examples, integrity. So so it sounds very very simple actually.
Yeah.
Just give examples. But the thing is, a lot of adults, we have to realize in the workplace, they also cut corners.
We don't realize we're doing it as well. If somebody has a deadline at work, we're taking shortcuts as well, project-based stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think we have to start with us first and reflect on how we can sort of change that mentality within us to make sure we set good examples.
Yeah. Real quick, on the other side of the coin, what can we do? And obviously there's a financial motivation for those that are becoming essay jockeys or ghostwriters. What can we do to try to reverse this procedure? Because obviously they're doing this out of financial necessity. Perhaps it's not easy for them to get a job. Is there anything that can be done on that end to try to reduce those that are offering these services, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a business where there is a demand. Of course, there's always a supply.
Okay.
But again, the one who does unethical businesses comes back to mentality again, integrity itself. If we don't have that mentality, even though there is a demand, we won't even think about having this business in the first place, right?
Good point.
But then since it's already quite massive, there should be legal actions as well, and we should be firm. So I'm quite disappointed with the statement from somebody, an academic in the rector forum, who is still questioning if it is deemed necessary, then we should take legal actions. But that's still a question. We should be firm.
It shouldn't be a question at all. Yeah.
We should take legal actions. We should have somebody that, being processed. Yes, so try to avoid the next generation to do the same thing. So we have to be serious if we want to fix this.
Agree. Naina, thank you so much for coming by and having this conversation. Obviously, this is a very important topic. And obviously, the gray area part now goes into AI as well, and how that plays a part in this.
Very complex.
But again, we as humans should have the one thing that computers don't have is integrity, and that's one thing us humans
and also
have. And we should continue to
authenticity.
hold that.
So
yeah, thanks again for
Thank
dropping
you.
by, and we hope that we're able to give you some insight on this very important topic.
Absolutely. And with that being said, we're now going to take another break, and right after, we'll have more updates and features just for you. Stay with us.